When most people think of the United Nations, they picture gridlock and endless debates. But the UN's most important work is almost never in the news. In fact, you probably benefit from it every single day without even knowing it. I'm Noah Zerbe, professor of international relations at Cal Poly Humboldt, and this is Global Insights. Today, we're kicking off a special series for the UN's 80th anniversary by uncovering its greatest, often invisible triumphs. We're going to explore how a global organization you might think of as ineffective actually helped wipe a disease from the planet, write the rules for everything from air travel to deep oceans, and provide food for over 100 million people on any given day. This is the first of 5 episodes where we'll explore the UN's successes, its failures, its defining moments, and ask whether it's still relevant for the 21st century. So let's get started with its silent victories. So where do we find these silent victories? Perhaps the most dramatic place to start is in the global war on disease, where the UN system achieved what no single nation could. For most of human history, smallpox was a terrifying scourge. It was highly contagious and deadly, killing an estimated 300 million people in the 20th century alone and leaving millions more scarred or permanently blind. It was a global monster. Then, in 1967, the World Health Organization, or WHO, launched an ambitious plan not just to control smallpox, but to eradicate it completely. This wasn't just a medical campaign, it was a diplomatic masterpiece. At the height of the Cold War, the WHO program brought together bitter rivals, the United States and the Soviet Union, both of whom contributed resources and expertise. For 13 years, an army of health workers fanned out across the globe, from bustling cities to the most remote rural villages, with a simple but powerful tool, a smallpox vaccine delivered with a bifurcated needle. And in 1980, the world received the official announcement: smallpox was gone. It's the only human disease ever to be completely wiped from the planet. A victory not for one country, but for all of them, coordinated by the United Nations.
Good news from Geneva. The World Health Organization has made it official. Smallpox throughout the world has been virtually eliminated.
And while the WHO was fighting that historic battle, another UN agency was waging a different kind of war on a wider front, the war for the health and survival of every child. I'm talking, of course, about UNICEF, the United Nations Children's Fund. Many of you have probably heard of its work in trying to eradicate polio, and we're incredibly close. Thanks to massive UNICEF-led vaccination campaigns marked by that famous drop of vaccine and a purple-stained pinky finger, polio is now confined to just a handful of communities in 2 countries. We're on the verge of making it the second human disease ever to be eradicated. But UNICEF's biggest victory might be one you've never heard of. One of the biggest killers of children isn't a famous disease, it's dehydration from diarrhea. In the 1970s, UNICEF championed a simple, almost ridiculously low-tech solution: oral rehydration therapy. It's essentially a small packet of salt and sugar mixed with clean water. This simple packet costs just pennies to produce, but its impact is priceless. It's estimated to have saved tens of millions of children's lives since its introduction. It's the perfect example of a silent victory, not glamorous, not on the news, but certainly absolutely world-changing. But the building blocks of survival go beyond medicine. For millions of people caught in the crossfire of conflict or chaos from natural disasters, survival means finding the next meal and a safe place to sleep. When crises hits, it's often the UN that becomes the world's first responder. Chances are you've seen their initials on the side of a plane or a sack of grain: WFP, the World Food Program. It's the largest humanitarian organization on the planet. Think of it as a logistical marvel, an army of nutritionists, pilots, and emergency coordinators who can get food to anyone, anywhere, under the most difficult conditions imaginable. They are on the front lines of today's biggest crises, from the war in Ukraine to the droughts in the Horn of Africa. In 2020, the WFP was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, and the Nobel Committee's reasoning was crucial. They argued that providing food isn't just charity, it's a precondition for peace. you cannot have a stable world when hundreds of millions of people are hungry. The WFP's work is a foundational pillar of global security. And where you find hunger and conflict, you'll inevitably find people fleeing for their lives. That's where the UN Refugee Agency, the UNHCR, steps in. The Office of the High Commissioner for Refugees was created in the wake of World War II to help millions of Europeans displaced by conflict. Today, its mission is global. Those tents, water jugs, and camping kits you see in refugee camps, that's the UNHCR at work. But its role is much deeper than that. The UNHCR is the guardian of the 1951 Refugee Convention, a key legal document that outlines the rights of refugees and the obligations of states to protect them. They work to ensure that people fleeing prosecution have the right to seek asylum and are not sent back into harm's way. In a world where, as of this year, 2025, there are more than 110 million displaced people forcibly displaced from their homes, the work of UNHCR has never been more vital. It provides a lifeline of last resort to the world's most vulnerable. Beyond providing for people's immediate needs, the United Nations mission has always been to uphold a deeper principle that every human being is born in inherent dignity and rights. In 1948, out of the ashes of war that witnessed unprecedented barbarism, the United Nations General Assembly adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the UDHR. This document was revolutionary. For the first time in history, the world came together to agree on a set of fundamental rights and freedoms that belong to everyone, everywhere, regardless of race, religion, or nationality. The right to life, the freedom from slavery, the right to free expression.
We stand today at the threshold of a great event, both in the life of the United Nations and in the life of mankind. This Universal Declaration of Human Rights may well become the international Magna Carta of all men everywhere.
While it's not a binding treaty, the UDHR has become the moral and legal bedrock for countless national constitutions and international laws. It's the yardstick by which we measure justice in our world. At the same time, the UN became a central actor in one of the most significant political transformations of the 20th century, decolonization. When the UN was founded in 1945, nearly one-third of the world's population lived in territories that were dependent on colonial powers. The UN Charter affirmed the principle of national self-determination, and through the work of its Special Committee on Decolonization, the United Nations provided a platform for independence movements and oversaw the transition to sovereignty of more than 80 former colonies. This process fundamentally remade the map of the world and transformed the UN's own General Assembly into the truly global body it is today. Finally, the UN recognized that our shared humanity is also expressed through our shared culture and history. Through UNESCO, the United Nations Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, the world works to protect its common inheritance. When you see a site landmarked as a World Heritage Site, from the Pyramids of Giza to the Great Wall of China, that's UNESCO at work, designating these places as having outstanding universal value that must be preserved for all humanity. It's also a recognition that some treasures do not belong just to one nation, but to everyone. So, we've just seen how the UN saves lives in moments of crises, but its most profound impact may be in work that you never actually see at all. It's not just about responding to disasters, it's about building the global rulebook that prevents them in the first place, creating the invisible infrastructure that makes our modern world possible. Think about the world's oceans. They cover over 70% of our planet, and they're vital for trade, resources, and security. Who makes the rules out there? For centuries, it was just might makes right. That changed with the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS. It's essentially a constitution for the oceans. It's a single, massive treaty negotiated over decades, and it sets the rules for everything: how far a country's territorial waters extend, who has the rights to fish and where, and how resources mined from the deep seabed, the common heritage of mankind, should be managed. It's an incredibly complex and stunning achievement of diplomacy that prevents countless conflicts over territory and resources. And this constitution for the oceans has a counterpart for the skies above. In the 1980s, scientists discovered a massive hole in the Earth's ozone layer, our vital shield against ultraviolet radiation. The cause was a class of chemicals used in aerosol sprays and refrigerants. The world's response was a landmark of international cooperation, the Montreal Framework, coordinated through the UN Environment Program. This treaty brought every country on Earth together to phase out these harmful substances. And it worked. The global ozone layer is now healing. The Montreal Protocol is widely considered to be the single most successful environmental agreement in history, proving that global environmental cooperation can avert catastrophe when the world acts decisively and together. Now, this next part may sound like a list of boring acronyms, but stick with me because these specialized agencies are the invisible wiring of our daily lives. Ever flown on an airplane? You can thank the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO. It sets the universal standards for flight safety and navigation that ensure a pilot from Kenya, an air traffic controller from Japan, and a plane built in Brazil are all operating from the same playbook. Ever send a letter to another country? The Universal Postal Union, or UPU, is why you can put a single stamp on it and trust that it will arrive. It creates a seamless network that connects over 192 different national postal services. Using your phone to watch this video? You have the International Telecommunications Union, the ITU, to thank. It coordinates global satellite orbits and radio frequencies to make sure that everything from GPS to international phone calls or the internet itself is possible. These systems are the silent victories. They're the triumphs of cooperation that we take for granted every single day. They only make the news when they fail, but the fact that they work constantly, quietly in the background is one of the UN system's most important and least celebrated achievements. So from eradicating a disease that plagued humanity for millennia, to feeding 100 million people on any given day, to building the invisible rules that allow our world to function, the United Nations system has had a profound, life-altering legacy. These are silent victories. They're not born from dramatic Security Council resolutions, but from decades of patient, persistent cooperation. They prove that when countries come together, they can solve practical problems and they can achieve incredible things. But this raises a crucial and difficult question. If the UN can organize the entire planet to defeat a virus, why does it so often fail to stop genocide? If it can build a global system of laws for the ocean, why does it seem powerless to prevent war? That's the paradox of the United Nations, and it's the question that we're going to confront in our next video. We'll turn from the UN's greatest triumphs to examine its darkest hours, moments of catastrophic failure from Rwanda to Srebrenica, and we'll ask why they happened. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching.